My name is Nolan Pryce. I'm 36 years old, and I work with logistic solutions based on automation and artificial intelligence. I've always been a quiet type, focused, patient. My edge has always been my long-term vision. While others chase shortcuts, I built foundations that would last. I dated Vivienne Hale for 4 years. She was ambitious, driven by status and visibility. In the beginning, she admired my focus. She said she loved how I stayed calm under pressure, how I didn't need constant validation. But over time, something shifted. My silence, which once impressed her, began to look like weakness in her eyes. The last few months of our relationship were tense. Vivienne grew frustrated with my routine. She couldn't understand why I kept turning down corporate jobs to keep developing my own software. To her, stability meant a visible paycheck and a title she could mention at dinner parties. To me, stability came from building something real, something that would matter long after the noise faded. One evening in late 2023, without warning, she ended it just like that, cold and direct. She looked at me and said she didn't see a future with me anymore, that I lacked ambition, that she needed more. Then she walked out of my apartment without another word, as if the 4 years we'd spent together meant nothing. A few weeks later, I heard she'd started dating some fintech executive. She began posting photos from expensive restaurants, luxury hotels, private events. She paraded her new life like she'd finally escaped a cage, like I'd been holding her back all along. She told mutual friends I wasn't keeping up with her pace, that I was stagnant, satisfied with mediocrity. That wasn't true. I just didn't feel the need to advertise every step I took. While she was chasing visibility, I was building something she couldn't see yet, something that would soon become impossible to ignore. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. For 2 years before we broke up, I'd been working on something significant, a logistics optimization system that could revolutionize how distribution centers operated. I had working prototypes, confidentiality agreements, and advanced negotiations with 2 major industry players. Everything was registered under my name, backed by legal documentation and technical validation. I kept a low profile deliberately. I spent my days writing code, running validations, building projections. I knew the right moment would come, and when it did, I wouldn't need to announce it. The work would speak for itself. Vivienne never understood that. She saw my quiet days at home as lack of drive. She didn't realize I was in constant communication with logistics executives, legal advisors, and software engineers. She thought I was wasting time. In reality, I was building something she couldn't comprehend. The months leading up to our breakup, she became openly dismissive. She'd roll her eyes when I explained why I couldn't commit to a 9 to 5 position. She'd make sarcastic comments about my little project whenever her friends asked what I did for work. It stung, but I didn't argue. I just kept working. 6 months after she left in June 2024, everything changed. I finalized the sale of my system to Archite Logistics in a $25 million deal with additional performance bonuses structured into the contract. The agreement was sealed after 3 rounds of technical analysis and due diligence. My technology will become the new standard across more than 200 distribution centers nationwide. The day I signed that contract, sitting in a conference room in downtown Chicago with 6 lawyers and 4 executives, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about validation, not from Vivienne or anyone else, but from myself. I'd stayed focused when everyone doubted me, and now the results were undeniable. The news spread quickly through industry channels. Within days, tech publications and logistics journals were covering the deal. Headlines called it a breakthrough in supply chain automation. My name appeared in articles I never expected to read. LinkedIn messages piled up. Old colleagues reached out to congratulate me. Some asked for advice. Others wanted to invest in whatever I did next. I kept my responses brief and professional. I wasn't interested in the spotlight. I just wanted to keep building. 3 weeks after the announcement went public, Vivienne sent me an email. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a moment before opening it. The message was carefully written, almost rehearsed. She said she'd been thinking about me, that she missed what we had, that she'd made a mistake walking away. I didn't respond immediately. I let it sit in my inbox for 2 days while I considered what, if anything, I want to say. But before I could reply, another message arrived and a text, then another email, this one longer and more emotional. She said she'd always believed in me, that she knew I had potential, that leaving was the hardest decision she'd ever made. But she'd been confused and overwhelmed. She asked if we could meet for coffee, just to talk. No pressure, no expectations. I recognized the pattern. This wasn't about me. It was about what I now represented. $25 million had a way of changing people's perceptions. Suddenly, the man she called stagnant and unambitious was worth a second look. I deleted the messages without responding. A week later, she showed up at a coffee shop I use frequent. I was meeting with a potential hire, a data analyst I'd been courting for my new venture. Vivienne walked in, spotted me, and made her way over with a confident smile, the kind she used to wear when she wanted something. "Nolan," she said, acting surprised. "I didn't know you still came here." I looked up calmly. "Vivienne, this is Daniel," I said, gesturing to the analyst across from me. "We're in the middle of something." Her smile wavered. "Of course. I just wanted to say hi. Maybe we could catch up sometime." "I'll think about it," I replied, then turned my attention back to Daniel, without another glance in her direction. She stood there for a moment, clearly expecting more, then walked away. Daniel raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. We continued our conversation as if nothing had happened. Over the next few weeks, Vivienne tried other approaches. She reached out to mutual friends, asking them to pass along messages. She started showing up at events she knew I might attend, always positioning herself nearby, always trying to catch my eye. But I maintained my distance. The door she'd slammed shut wasn't going to reopen just because circumstances had changed. With the capital from the Archite deal, I founded PriceNet in late 2024, a holding company focused on sustainable logistics solutions. I kept the operation lean. No flashy office in Manhattan. No unnecessary staff. Just a small team of exceptional people who share my vision and work ethic. I hired carefully. Every person who joined PriceNet went through multiple rounds of interviews. I didn't just assess technical skills. I looked for character, reliability, the ability to work without constant supervision or validation. I wanted people who understood that building something meaningful required patience and discipline. Within the first 8 months of 2025, we launched 2 additional products. One was a carbon footprint tracking system for freight companies. The other was a predictive maintenance tool for warehouse equipment. Both filled gaps in the market that larger companies had overlooked. Both started generating revenue within weeks of launch. The industry took notice. I started receiving invitations to speak at conferences. Universities asked me to guest lecture. Investment firms wanted meetings. A few venture capitalists reached out about funding future projects. Though I didn't need their money, I was profitable and growing steadily without diluting ownership or control. I accepted some speaking opportunities, always choosing smaller, more specialized events over the big-name conferences. I preferred talking to people who actually worked in logistics, who understood the technical challenges and operational realities, the entrepreneurs, the engineers, the warehouse managers who dealt with inefficiencies every single day. At one of these events, a panel discussion in Seattle about supply chain innovation, I shared the stage with 3 other founders. During the Q&A session, someone asked about my journey, how I built something substantial while staying under the radar for so long. "Silence isn't the same as inaction," I said. "Sometimes the quietest people are the ones working the hardest. They're just not wasting energy on announcements." The audience responded well. After the panel, several attendees approached me with questions and business cards. One of them was a logistics director from a major retailer who'd been struggling with the exact problems my system solved. We scheduled a call for the following week. That conversation eventually led to a pilot program worth 7 figures. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual connections that Vivienne's life had taken some turns. Her relationship with the fintech executive had ended badly. She tried to position herself as someone who'd been part of my early success, telling people at social gatherings that she'd always supported my vision. But those who actually knew us weren't buying the revised history. I never said a negative word about her. Anyone who asked me about our relationship got a simple, neutral response. We wanted different things. It didn't work out. I wish her well, and I meant it. Holding on to bitterness would have been a waste of energy I didn't have to spare. By mid-2025, PriceNet had grown to 15 employees. We'd opened a small office in Austin, Texas, where several team members were based. Revenue was climbing steadily. More importantly, the solutions we built were making a real difference. Distribution centers were operating more efficiently. Companies were reducing their carbon emissions. Workers were dealing with fewer equipment failures and delays. We'd also established strategic partnerships and pilot programs with several major logistics companies. These weren't just contracts on paper. They were real implementations, real data flowing through our systems, real results that were being tracked and validated. Each successful pilot opened doors to larger deployments. That mattered to me more than the money. Don't get me wrong, financial success was gratifying. But knowing that the work I'd poured years into was actually solving problems, that felt like the real achievement. One afternoon in June 2025, I received a message from a journalist at a major business publication. She was writing a feature about entrepreneurs who'd succeeded without traditional venture capital backing. She wanted to interview me about building PriceNet, about staying independent in an industry obsessed with funding rounds and valuations. I agreed to the interview. We spoke for nearly 2 hours. She asked thoughtful questions about my approach to business, my philosophy on growth, the challenges of staying focused when everyone around you is chasing the next big trend. Near the end of our conversation, she asked about setbacks. Was there ever a moment when you doubted yourself? When you thought about giving up? I considered the question carefully. There were moments when people close to me didn't understand what I was building. I said, when they confused patience with complacency, that was hard. But doubt? No, I never doubted the work itself. I knew what I was creating had value. I just needed time to prove it. The article came out in mid-July. It was fair, well-researched, and surprisingly personal. The journalist had captured something essential about my approach that even I hadn't fully articulated. She wrote about the cost of quiet ambition, about how society often mistakes visibility for success and silence for failure. The piece resonated widely. It was shared thousands of times on social media. My inbox filled with messages from entrepreneurs who said they'd felt seen for the first time. Vivienne read it. I know, because she sent me one final message afterward. It was short. I finally understand. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I read it twice, then archived it without responding. There was nothing left to say. She'd made her choice years ago, and I'd moved on completely. By late summer 2025, PriceNet had reached several important milestones. We'd secured pilot programs and strategic partnerships with 11 major logistics companies across North America. Our technology was processing data from hundreds of distribution centers. The revenue projections for the year were exceeding even my most optimistic estimates. More importantly, we were converting pilot programs into full-scale deployments at a rate that validated everything we'd built. I celebrated quietly, took my core team out for dinner at a nice restaurant in Austin, gave everyone substantial bonuses, thanked them for believing in the vision and executing with precision. Then we got back to work. There were new features to develop, new markets to explore, new problems to solve. Around that time, I started dating someone new. Her name was Lauren. She was a civil engineer who specialized in sustainable infrastructure projects. We met at a conference on green technology in Denver. She was presenting research on carbon-neutral construction materials. I was on a panel about logistics optimization. We got coffee after the event, then dinner the next night. Then we started calling each other regularly, even though she lived in Portland, and I was splitting time between Chicago and Austin. The distance didn't bother either of us. We were both busy with work we cared about. We both understood that building something meaningful required focus and time. Lauren never asked about my bank account. She never tried to impress me with expensive tastes or designer brands. She wore practical clothes, drove a 12-year-old Subaru Outback, and spent her weekend hiking or reading technical journals. When I told her about PriceNet, she asked detailed questions about the technology itself, not about valuations or exit strategies. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely comfortable with someone. There was no performance, no need to prove anything. Just two people who respected each other's work and enjoyed each other's company. One evening in late August, Lauren and I were having dinner at my apartment in Chicago. I'd cooked pasta, nothing fancy, and we were talking about her latest project, a bridge redesign in Seattle that incorporated recycled materials. "You know what I appreciate about you?" she said, setting down her wine glass. "You never try to be more than you are. You're just yourself consistently." I smiled. "Is that a compliment?" "It's the highest compliment I can give." She said, "Most people are performing all the time, trying to seem smarter, richer, more successful than they actually are. You don't do that. You just do the work and let it speak for itself." I thought about Vivienne in that moment, about how different these two people were, about how much energy I'd wasted trying to justify my choices to someone who fundamentally didn't understand me. I had someone in my life who needed a performance, I said, who needed constant validation and visible proof of progress. It was exhausting. Lauren nodded. I dated someone like that once. He measured everything by how it looked to other people. His job title, his apartment, his car. None of it was about what he actually wanted. It was about what everyone else would think. "What happened?" I asked. "I left," she said simply. I realized I was adapting myself to fit his need for appearances. I wasn't being honest about what mattered to me. So I walked away. I respected that. It took clarity and courage to leave when things weren't right, even when they looked good from the outside. In early September 2025, I received an invitation to speak at a major technology conference in San Francisco. It was one of the big ones, the kind I usually avoided, but the organizers specifically wanted me to talk about building profitable companies without venture capital. They said my story was inspiring a new generation of founders to consider alternative paths to success. I almost declined. Then Lauren convinced me to accept. "Your perspective matters," she said. "People need to hear that there's more than one way to build something meaningful." So I went. The conference was massive. Thousands of attendees, huge exhibition halls, endless panels and presentations. I felt out of place among the startup founders pitching their pre-revenue companies and their dreams of billion-dollar valuations. My talk was scheduled for the second day. I kept it simple. Talked about patience, about building for substance rather than speed, about knowing your numbers and trusting your instincts even when others don't understand. The audience responded better than I expected. During the Q&A, person after person stood up to thank me for validating their own quieter approaches. One founder said he'd been feeling pressure from his co-founders to raise money they didn't need, and my talk had given him the confidence to push back. Another said she'd been called unambitious for prioritizing profitability over growth, and hearing my story reminded her she wasn't alone. After the session, a line of people waited to talk to me. I stayed for an hour answering questions, offering advice, listening to their stories. It felt good to help, to share what I'd learned through years of trial and error. As I was leaving the conference hall, I saw her. Vivienne. She was standing near the exit, clearly waiting for me. She looked different, more tired, less certain of herself. "Nolan," she said as I approached. That was a powerful talk. "Thank you," I said, not stopping. She fell into step beside me. "I meant what I said in my message. I'm sorry. I didn't see what you were building. I was wrong." I stopped walking and turned to face her. "Vivienne, I appreciate the apology." "I do. But we're not going to be friends. We're not going to reconnect. Well, we had ended a long time ago, and it ended for good reasons." "I know," she said quietly. "I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I lost, what I gave up. You gave up a version of me that doesn't exist anymore. I said the person I was when we were together was still figuring things out. I'm different now. And honestly, you're probably different, too. We both moved on. Let's leave it at that." She nodded slowly. "You seem happy." "I am," I said, "and I meant it." She smiled sadly. Good. You deserve that. Then she walked away. And this time, I knew it was final. There would be no more messages, no more attempts to reconnect. We both said what needed to be said, and now we could close that chapter permanently. Today, PriceNet continues to grow. We're developing new technologies, building partnerships with companies that share our values, expanding our pilot programs into full deployments. I'm exactly where I want to be, doing exactly what I set out to do. Vivienne was a reminder of something important. That real ambition doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need approval or validation or constant visibility. It just needs focus, patience, and the willingness to build something solid piece by piece, day by day, until the foundation is so strong that nothing can shake it. She left because she couldn't see it. But the truth is, it was never about her seeing it. It was about me building it. And I did. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.